if somebody forces you to do something you're not too crazy about, and on top of that you find it difficult, and you don't do very well on the book report, you don't do very well on the tests, that can have a negative influence on the way you view reading in general, because it accumulates. Oh, reading again. Oh, the reading assignment again. Then you end up hating reading, right? So, but if you ended up having a different kind of experience, if you enjoyed it, you had something the teacher said to you, listen, I'm going to give you 5 different choices. You pick the reading, the article, whatever you want to read, you choose. I'm not going to tell you what to choose. You just make sure you do this, 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 and this. That's all. But you pick what you want, and I gave you some variety. Maybe there are even 10 titles. And I made sure you had some variety to choose from. And you're like, hey, this I like. This is one I want to read. And then you read it, lo and behold, everybody's happy. You write a brilliant book report. You come to class ready to talk all about the book you read, the main characters, the story, the plot, etc. And all of a sudden you start liking reading. So the same thing happens to learning a language. So I was getting all these calls and messages on Facebook and everything, and people were sending messages by Facebook and they were saying, yeah, can I still learn? Oh, I don't know if this is for me, that kind of stuff. Defeatist views on learning language. And certainly we can help people turn things around. We can say, hey, forget about it. Start off, tabula rasa, a clear slate. We're going to start afresh, anew. This is a new experience for you. Let's try it again, and you're going to enjoy this thing. But in order to do that, in order to help you with your work, you got to know who you're dealing with. Okay, what kind of a background they have, where they studied before, what they expect from you. In your handouts, you're going to see a draft copy of what would be a needs analysis document. Now, we're going to work it out with the IT department to see if that can be completed in digital form, so we don't have to make a zillion copies at the institutional level, and then people start complaining about costs, although that doesn't really matter. It's better to have something like that than not have it. But in general, this is something to give you an idea as to what we're going to do, okay? So, a needs analysis is something that will be standard policy starting in June, but what is a needs analysis is the question we just answered, and why are needs analyses important? I'd like you to talk to a partner. I'd like you to kind of find ways in which a needs analysis would help your class. Compare it to what maybe you've been doing before. You might be doing needs analyses now, but if you haven't been doing needs analyses, how would that help you with your teaching? Okay? Talk to your partner, and then let's get some ideas after we have an opportunity to discuss. Okay. Fernanda, how do you think a needs analysis can help you do your work in the classroom?
Well, it helps because, obviously not every person is the same, so you have to know what you're dealing with, right? And not just like what they need like with the grammar or speaking or whatever, but like how you need to approach, right, to your students. You need to know like how they need to be approached to.
Okay.
In order to get the information that you want them to learn, right?
Okay. All right. Good. Josie?
I guess if a student isn't confident in class, they're more likely to write down what they want rather than say what they want. So if you put in a needs analysis, like what kind of activities do you enjoy, they're more likely to write it than actually say it to you. But I guess it's also helpful to know where they've been prior. So a student who spent like a year here versus a student who spent a year studying English at home with like a friend or on Duolingo or something. So you can know, although everyone's technically at the same level, you can see who's done what exactly.
Okay, good. It's so apart from how they really feel, going beyond the typical language issues, also it's important to know the background, how they got to where they are now. So whether they were in face-to-face classes, some people might have taken online courses, that kind of thing. So, they're different. They have a different composition in terms of their background. Very good. Yes.
That would be perfect. On Saturday I've got a conversation class. Now I've got one guy who works for the airport, and he's learning English because he liaises with Canada, America. One year I had some clown with drugs at the airport. That's his job.
Okay.
The rest of the class is comprised of 14 and 15-year-old teenage girls.
Oh.
It's a conversation class, right? The two sides of the class don't get involved with each other because Justin Bieber, crime. It doesn't really work. So it would help to actually focus the class or split the class into adults who have a professional interest in people who just wish conversation because they're learning now. Things like that.
All right. Now, you have two topics that are of interest to everybody, regardless of age. Although in this specific case, you know, the guy or the older person probably is not too into Justin Bieber, right? But music in general is something that interests everyone, and crime affects everyone. Because even though kids don't really, well, I wouldn't say kids don't have to really assume responsibility for avoiding crime or dealing with crime directly, but they are influenced to some extent in terms of their safety, their personal safety. We see kids getting mugged all the time. So the idea would be to kind of, perhaps in that particular case, and we're jumping into the discussion part, how do we deal with this kind of situation? So perhaps the kids can talk about how crime affects them, right? How it impacts their lives, and the older ones can come up with possible solutions, or how, you know, society can deal with crime in its present state. You know, because Lima right now is really difficult. It's really difficult to live in Lima. Every time you turn on the TV in the mornings, it's like you want to change the channel. So, kind of, okay, how can I kind of reassign different aspects of the topic so that each age group feels like they can participate and they can make it a part of their own interest? Okay, I mean that's probably one way to deal with it in one sense. Yeah.
Which is what we did. We came down to the basic level. Actually, one girl had been robbed by a guy with a gun 3 times in the last 2 months.
Wow.
Really? But it ended up, we spoke generally, and then I stayed an extra 30 minutes, 40 minutes after the class to speak more specifically with the guy about subjects that he wanted to talk about.
Right.
Didn't really fly well with the rest of the course.
Right. So that's the, how do I find a way to get the topic, to get everyone to participate, so that if somebody could talk about one aspect of that topic that is within their realm of experience and interest, and how we get the others, so that you kind of get everybody to come together somehow. You know, that would be a way to approach it. It's not that easy, of course, when you have people with different ages in the same class. I've seen it before. The older students sometimes, I mean, I remember I went to observe a class and there were like 25 people in the class, and there were 2 older students each on each end of the U-shaped configuration, and everybody else was a teenager. And all the teenagers were participating like crazy, and the older students were quiet. And the teacher kind of forgot they were there. The teacher kind of projected herself forward, and so physically she had the 2 older students behind her, and she was calling on all the young students, and the older students were like feeling left out. You could tell they were, but I guess they were kind of like, they felt like, well, there's no other way out. I'm just going to have to go along with this, not just sit here passively and get along with it. So it's not easy when you have a mixed group like that, but that's good that you brought that up.
This would act as a filter before they actually get to the class, so they could filter the class.
And that's the idea. That's the idea. Good. Over here, anybody else? Yes, Martin.
In general, when I make this needs analysis, that means that I need a high flexibility. No? And when I have my book and I have to make my 2 units in 1 month, but the guys want to hear something different, what I'm doing then.
Okay, well, it's good that you brought that up. We work with a course book. The course book provides us with most of the learning and practice activities. Otherwise, if we didn't have a course book, we'd have to create them ourselves, right? So it's not practical. That's why we have course books. But the teacher, by definition, a teacher is always adapting the learning experience and each lesson to what students need and want. And we're always dealing with people who are different in some way or another. So we talked about formative assessment a couple of sessions ago. And formative assessment is when the teacher is constantly looking for information, collecting information of different types from students, and determining whether the class is going well or it's not going well. I can execute the class according to the lesson plan. In fact, I could follow the suggested lesson plan as it's presented in the teacher's manual, step by step, verbatim. But I'll say I'm going to execute it exactly the way it is here, and I'm not going to make any changes. Normally, we don't do that as teachers. Normally, we're always constantly evaluating things, and we're saying, oops, it seems like we're not going in the right direction. I better make an adjustment. Now remember, we talked about the number of decisions that teachers make. In a 1.5 hour, 2 hour class, it's about 200, 300 decisions that most of the time are concerned with changing the lesson plan from its original scheme. So it is part of the work. As a teacher, we have to kind of be very aware of what our students need and want. We have to stick to a game plan. That's why it's not easy being a teacher. A lot of people out there think it is. A lot of people think as long as you can speak English, get in there, jump in there, and start teaching. It doesn't work like that. Teaching is very hard work. That's why in some countries, they pay teachers more than they do other professions because they realize it's very hard work and it's exceptional work and it has a huge impact on people and people's lives. It's not easy work. It never was and never will be. So it is, I know, I understand where you're coming from. We're trying to be practical, but it is part of the work. The challenge is, how can we become efficient users of time? How can we manage our time efficiently so that it doesn't become overwhelming? And that's something we're going to be working on, okay? All right, very good. Let's see. I'd like you to look at the needs analysis document that you have in front of you and work together with a partner. And I'd like you to identify the questions that are primarily concerned with helping you get to know your students a little better. So getting to know your students, who they are, and which ones are more useful perhaps for lesson planning purposes, for teaching purposes. So take a look. You have 10 questions. I'd like you to look at the 10 questions. Which ones are more oriented towards getting you to know your students better as people? And which ones are more perhaps useful for lesson planning purposes? Okay? Okay. Let's see what we have. All right, Cecilia, give us a question that's more meant to get us to know our students a little better.
The first question.
Okay, why is that question even there? What do you think?
Because it's necessary to know the level of the student. And maybe to know the other kind of methodology that they receive in other institutes.
All right, some people, they might be in Basic 3, Basic 4, but they might have studied somewhere else for years. I ran into somebody this morning, she told me, well, I studied through Basic something somewhere else, and I stopped studying, and I think I forgot everything. So I need to study again, I need to learn again. So this kind of tells us if they're only starting for the first time at Euridiomas, or if they've studied maybe for years, they've been studying for years and they still can't get it. Okay, so that is important to know. Another one, yes, Cesar?
No, based on that again, it's like in school. I got some guys also that study English in school. Well, basically here, like first class private school. If you go up to public schools here, it's like almost 0.
Also some private schools
Or
too.
they are like masters in the birth to be.
No,
They study the same thing every single year.
and the reason for that is that, there are a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is because the teachers themselves don't have a high enough level in the language.
Sure.
Most of the teachers, time and time again, have been proven to have a very low level of English. A1 or A2, the vast majority, not only in Peru, but throughout most of Latin America, and perhaps throughout most of the world, okay? But a lot of teachers have a very low level of English. So if my level is A1, I'm not gonna get you to B2 anywhere. There's no way on earth I can get you to a B2 or B1 or even an A2. So we're constantly teaching the same thing. Good morning. So they start off in the first grade in the private sector, because last year they started in elementary school in the public sector for the first time in Peruvian history. So they start off in the first grade. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. They finish high school. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yeah? Okay. It's like me in Portuguese. That's it. Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite. And that sounds fantastic. Like, oh, look at this guy. He speaks Portuguese. Don't ask me anything else. Okay? All right, very good. Well, another question. Charles.
Yeah, I think number 2 as well. Why are you studying English? That's every student comes to class with their own goals, their own reasons for studying. And so that's obviously like an important thing to know about your students before a class begins, so you can better serve their needs and make sure that the class is they get a meaningful outcome from the class.
Good. 60 or 100 years ago, we had a bigger difference between people who studied language because they loved languages. So intrinsically motivated students who wanted to learn language because they love language in and of itself and they wanted to expand their horizons in terms of different cultures and travel around the world. So the intrinsically motivated students used to abound. There used to be many of them. Today, most students are extrinsically motivated. For a reason, they want to raise, they want to get a better job, they want to travel. They were forced to study by their parents, whatever. I don't know. If they didn't study, they were going to get thrown out of their houses. I don't know. So, but the challenge for us, and that's why teaching is so complex and challenging, again, sorry about the redundancy there, is we have to get the student, in addition to the extrinsic motivation, we have to provide the student with intrinsic motivation. So we change the student's perception, regardless of why they're studying. They might want to raise, they might want to travel to wherever. They might need to study for a master's in Holland where they have an English-only program. Whatever the reason is. But once they start studying with you, you're supposed to get them somehow to discover the magic of learning another language. Get them intrinsically motivated. You give them such a wonderful experience that all of a sudden they start loving their language learning. Okay, does that make sense? You can do that. Do you believe you can do that? You can do that. That's the magic of being a teacher. Okay, a real teacher. Because some people do it for a salary, okay? Some people don't really care. Like, for example, somebody who won't be working with us much longer, the other day said something like, they called the teachers in a little early because we were starting new classes somewhere at a new branch. And, so everybody showed up a little early because obviously it's the first day, new branch. Everybody's excited. We have to go over the major points and everything just to make sure everybody's on the same page. She shows up like 3 minutes before class was supposed to begin. Everybody showed up at 8. She showed up at 8:42. Class was at 8:45. So they go to the teacher and they say, well, how come, hey, listen, we were expecting you at 8 o'clock. You said, hey, I don't get paid to come in on my free time. It's like, oh, okay. So when I found that out, I said, okay, that's the attitude. She doesn't care about teaching. She doesn't care about the institution either. That's the wrong attitude. At least it's the wrong attitude for this place while I'm in charge, okay? If that's your attitude, you gotta go work somewhere else, okay? This is not the place for you. But in general, teachers do a lot out of devotion, out of love for the profession. Teachers usually aren't rich, okay? But we do it because we love the profession. We do it because we know we're making a difference. Whether you're teaching math, whether you're teaching history or English, or even Portuguese or German or whatever you're teaching, you're changing somebody's life out there. Okay, so we have to be prepared. We have to convince our students, hey, listen, I know your parents want you out of the house, okay, at least once a week. But don't worry, you're gonna love it. By the time I'm done with you, you're gonna love English, you're gonna love German, you're gonna love Portuguese, you're gonna love whatever it is. Okay? That's what we need to do. That's why needs analysis is so important. Does that make sense? Okay. Another question? Yes, Hamley.
Yeah, I think numbers is a very important question and gives you information about the student's personality and gives you clues to work in class. It says what you speak about the course and the teacher. Yeah, when the student says something about the course, expectations about the course, I mean, learning about grammar, speaking, whatever, so it says something about the personality of that person and give you some information, tips to work in class. For me, it's a very important question, number 7.
How many of you agree with Hamley? Number 7, expectations about the course and the teacher. Okay, very good. Okay. What about something that will help us with our lesson planning? Hey, Chris, how about you give us an example?
What, something that will...
From that needs analysis form. Something that would be more helpful, because these other questions help us figure out, who we're dealing with, the students, why they're studying, who they are as people. Which questions would help you with your lesson planning, with the actual lesson planning stage?
Let's say like 3 and 4 maybe. So they kind of like, for example, like if a student says Euro idiomas is like bad and the other institutes is like excellent, then we'd want to know like why they've ticked Euro idiomas as bad. Like it's like giving you feedback.
Yeah, you're gonna need to work really hard. You don't really know because it doesn't give you much space to tell you why, but you're going to have to work really hard to kind of change that impression completely,
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
So something must have happened. For example, we got a complaint a couple of days ago about a teacher at the advanced level. This was in the advanced 9. This is the last course. And so somebody, you know, some of these students are very vocal. And so the student wrote it on the Facebook page, first of all, and Facebook is terrible because it's
Yeah.
very bad publicity, and marketing seems to think you can't erase the comments, but I think you can.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so the student said, oh, I've had horrible teachers in the advanced level, the entire advanced level, and on top of that, before I finish, I get another bad teacher. And I was curious because they reported to me and they said, hey, Leo, what are we going to do? So I said, I want to know the names of the teachers who taught this person. And they got the names back to me, and it turns out that these are all great teachers. Very well qualified. They've got their credentials, they got all the certificates, they've got degrees. I've known some of them since we worked together somewhere else. And I know these people. These people know what they're doing. So sometimes, you know, we're like, what's going on here? But we have to kind of change this person's mind, because we wouldn't want somebody to leave to finish the program with this negative impression, hey, the advanced level is lousy, all the teach. I mean, the final impression you get before you leave has to be a positive one, right? So somehow we got to talk to these students. We got to talk to them. We got to find out what's going on. So yeah, it is a very important question. And if it's a negative for us, we got to change it around somehow. Okay, good. Another one for lesson planning? Yes, James.
Well, I think when we're asking about their strengths and weaknesses, it would give us some inspiration of specific strategies or techniques that we have to include in our lesson plans to address those issues.
Good, good. One of the things we want to do is we want to recognize our students' strengths, whether they're real strengths or not. They think they're strengths, right? So for example, let's imagine you have this idea that you pronounce very, very well. Your pronunciation is great. So you're proud of the way you pronounce English or whatever the language is. But I don't know that. And all of a sudden I start correcting you all the time. And so something's going to happen, right? Now I might be justified in my corrections, but I had no idea he was proud of his English pronunciation. So that might lead to a problem. However, if I know beforehand that he's very proud of his pronunciation, if I have to correct him, I'm going to be more careful. I'm going to strategize. How am I going to help him without hurting his feelings? You see what I'm saying? If we don't do a needs analysis, there's no way I can do that. Does that make sense? Yeah? And the same thing applies to weaknesses. So, you know, Nicholas might say, well, my weakness is conjugating verbs. I get them mixed up. I get the tenses mixed up. Okay, I get the present and the past. I have a hard time. So I know that I can send Nicholas. It might be something as simple as a website. Hey, Nicholas, listen. In your needs analysis form, I noticed that you mentioned something about verbs. Why don't you try this website out? Just a little slip of paper with a piece of, you know, the link. Send it, give it to him. Okay, try it out and let me know how it works for you. Okay, or whatever it is. He's going to see me differently. He's going to say, hey, look at this guy. He came up to me. He cared enough. He actually read it. And he cared enough to, you know, he took the time to find a website that he thought could help me. And it's going to change the nature of my relationship with him. He's going to be more cooperative. He's going to be more positive in his attitude in my class. Isn't that going to help you? If you have a student who sees, right, the relationship in a more positive light, that's going to be better for you. It's going to make your work easier. So you see, it's not just finding out information. A needs analysis can help in many, many other ways that we normally wouldn't expect. Okay? All right, good. All right, so that's the needs analysis. So I'm going to all the branches this month, and I'm going to announce this too. So you guys are the first ones who are getting this information. I think we need this because it's a very basic step. And to be honest, I've worked in institutes for many years, and no institute does it, at least no major one. Okay, not a big one. Not the two bigger, whatever you want to call them, brothers, cousins, whatever you want to call them. They don't do it, but we are. I think it's this notion that when you come to with idiomas, you have to find something different. And it's going to make your work easier. Because a teacher's work can be stressful. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
It can be stressful. It can be very, very fulfilling. It make you very happy. You make your day. If you had a great class, you come out singing and dancing and jumping up and down, and you're like, oh, that was so great. And then you have to do it all over again, right, the next time. So the challenge is to make sure that you feel that way every time you teach, with every single group you teach, And they feel the same thing about you. That's the challenge. So we need all of our tools and resources to get there, okay? And this is one that's very powerful. All right, so we have to analyze the information, adapt our classes, okay? And return to our students with a different outlook that will help us make the learning more effective, okay? Another thing that I think is important is making sure our students learn. I had another presentation planned for today. I changed it. Actually, I just finished preparing this presentation because I came in the morning from this place, and it's a big company, and we have some teachers there already, corporate teachers. And one of the things they told me was that a lot of the managers weren't happy with their previous learning experiences because they've been studying with different institutes for 3 years, and they hadn't learned a thing. There were still basic level students, very low basic level students. So, you know, the manager spoke to me. She said, hey, listen, you know what? We want something new. We just started working with you guys. And she was inquiring about the blended program, because we have a blended program as well. And so I had to explain the whole blended program and everything. And I took notice of the fact that they had a lot of people who had been studying for years and they hadn't made any progress. And I said to myself, oops, I think we better make sure we don't do the same thing. Okay, we have to really, I mean, sometimes we take it for granted that everybody kind of knows. But we got to talk about it anyway every now and then, because we have to make sure that when we teach, our students are really learning, and that they know they're learning, and that you can prove that they've learned. Okay, because if we don't, then we're going to have situations like these people who've been studying for 3 years and they're still basic level students. And they're wondering, oh, where did all that money go? The money went down the tubes. The company invested in me, I tried my best, and I haven't made any progress. I'm still saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Okay, so we have to make sure that when they work with us, because I've made a top priority, I want to meet with all these corporates, since we're now working with corporate again. I want to make sure that our corporate teachers know this. We have to make sure that every time a lesson is finished, our students have a sense of achievement. And they know, and they're cognizant of what they have learned. They have a clear idea. Before I came to this class, I didn't know how to do this. Class is over, I can do this now. And we have to make sure all of our students do the same thing, okay? So, how do we make sure? All right, we have to link everything to learning objectives. Now, we're in the process of devising our learning objectives for the Young Learners Program, for the adult program. All of our objectives are aligned with, as I mentioned at one of our sessions, with the Common European Framework, with the global scale of English, but we're not finished. So today we're going to write some objectives. So you have an idea of how objectives are put together. So when you look at your course book, even though you don't have the objective itself from the central office, you know what to look for. You know what you need to get your students to learn how to do. Okay? So we're going to look at that today. Because in the end, the objectives will be indicative of whether your students were able to achieve the goals for the course, for that lesson, and if they've learned anything. Okay? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to review something we did a little while ago, a couple of sessions ago, when we looked at evaluation, just to kind of refresh our memories, kind of bring back, get rid of the cobwebs. So we're going to match the goals, objectives, outcomes, and standards. So if you look in your handouts, you have this. They're all mixed up. Remember? I don't know if you remember this exercise. I don't see anybody nodding, so it seems like you might not have seen this before. Anyway, look. In the first column, you have learning goals. Learning goals are general in nature. They're purposely vague, because normally learning goals describe what you're going to learn in the course as a whole, okay? Or in a unit. It might be a unit also, okay? So learning goals describe what you're learning in the course or what you're learning in a unit. And they're purposely vague because normally you have a number of learning objectives associated with the goal. Okay? The objectives are more specific. So a learning objective, as opposed to a learning goal, a learning objective is what the student will learn in a particular lesson, what you're going to teach them how to do. So for example, I will teach you how to order food in a restaurant. I will teach you how to evaluate different choices or alternatives and make a decision. I will teach you how to listen for specific information in a lecture. I will teach you how to arrive at the main idea of an article, of an online article, okay? Whatever. So I'm going to teach you something specific that you will apply in real life. That is the learning objective, okay? So it's more specific than the goal. In some cases, we make a distinction between a learning goal, a learning objective, and a learning outcome. And the learning outcome is even more specific. And the learning outcome includes one additional thing that the learning objective doesn't, which is the criterion for success. So it's usually, okay, it's what I have to do and what I need to show or use in order to do it successfully. That usually is a grammar structure, a set of vocabulary, or a particular pronunciation feature. It's usually a form that supports the learning outcome. So, learning objectives are when we teach, so we're teaching people how to do something. Learning outcomes are when we are evaluating and confirming that the person has learned. Okay, is that clear? And finally, we have the standard, which is a descriptor, a can-do descriptor from an international standard like the Common European Framework. Okay? That kind of matches everything. So it kind of all glues together, comes together. So it makes sense. It's a coherent string, okay, of learning aims or lesson aims. What I'd like you to do, I'd like you to look at the first column. The first column is the only one that has things in order. All right? So if we look at the first goal, at the end of the course, the student will be able to compare and contrast preferences. That could be choices, it could be alternatives, it's the same thing. Let's look for an objective that kind of goes with that, okay? Is it B1, to describe what a situation or story is about? B2, to offer a presentation or a speech regarding an academic topic or current events? Or B3, to describe various alternatives and decide on one? It's B3, okay? So we go A1, B3. Let's go one more step, the outcome. So now we're getting even more specific. So we're looking at evaluation of options, making a decision. Let's get a little more specific. And I told you that when it came to an outcome, what we're looking at is something that will help us decide if the student successfully learned or not. And it's usually a grammar point or vocabulary or pronunciation. So let's see. So now we know A1 and B3 go together. Let's see if it's C1, to describe a problem and solution regarding the issue of global warming using appropriate vocabulary. C2, to ask for information from a car dealer and make a choice on a particular model using prefer, would like, and choose. That is the correct outcome. See, we're getting very specific. We go from general to more specific. Here we're making a decision on a car. We're going to buy a car. I need some information. I'm going to make a decision, but I have to use would like, prefer, and choose correctly most of the time in order for it to be successful. Okay, and finally, let's look at the CFR descriptors. So we now have three things that go together. We need the fourth. D1, can compare and contrast alternatives, discussing what to do, where to go, who or which to choose, etc. That's it. Okay, so that's a nice little string that goes together. Now, what we're going to do today, we're going to first continue with the second option, the second goal, A2 and A3. We're going to do the same. We're going to match it, and then we're going to write our own objectives. Okay, do that now, please. I'll give you a couple of minutes to match the remaining two rows. All right. So A2 goes with what?
B1.
Good. And?
C3.
Good. And?
D2.
Excellent. And the rest we know. Okay, very good. Do you see the logic, the way it works? Okay? And this is what we need to do for every course, and this is what we need to do for every lesson. In fact, if you take a really good look at every activity in your book, and actually any activity that you create yourself, you'd be able to figure out what the objective is. You have to be able to figure it out, okay? There has to be a purpose. It's not like, hey, let's do something and let's just talk and see what happens. Okay, I mean, you can do that too, but that's like once in a blue moon. Everything in the class has to have a purpose, okay? If it doesn't have a purpose, usually it's a waste of time because it's not well designed, okay? All right, good. So now we're gonna write some objectives. And we're gonna try to make it easy. Now, writing objectives is not easy. Okay, some people study for 4 years, 5 years to be able to figure out how to write objectives. In fact, most people don't write objectives. A lot of people, I won't say most, a lot of people don't. A lot of teachers, at least in our field in the English language teaching, they don't write their own objectives. They get them from the book, or they just follow the book. I'll be honest with you, we're doing things that a lot of people out there don't. And we're doing them because we know they're the right thing to do, okay? And so when we're teaching, you have to really get used to the fact. It's like everything we do in life, we have a plan. We gotta have a plan, we gotta stick to the plan. We can deviate from it slightly, but we have to have a purpose behind everything we do, okay? The objectives provide that sense of purpose. Why am I teaching this? Why am I learning this if you're the student, okay? How do I confirm if this actually took place, okay? So what you're gonna do, okay, I'd like you to come up with any objective. Work together with a partner. Write one objective. We'll write some on the board here, okay? So what you need to do first, they're can-do statements. They're going to be can-do statements. So the first thing you need to write is the word can, okay? Because you're thinking the student can do this, the student can do that, okay? So when we're talking about proficiency, language proficiency, usually we're working with can-do descriptors, and the can-do descriptors are associated with the objectives. So you're going to start off with can, and you're going to start off with the verb. But you have to pick the verb very carefully, because the verb has to be, in other words, I have to be able to see what you're doing to some extent. Somehow I have to figure out whether the person is doing that action or performing that action. Okay? So for example, can predict the topic of an article based on something, for example. Okay? So how do I know? When I ask people, well, what do you think the topic is? And Alberto's going to say, well, I think the topic is global warming because it talks a lot about carbon dioxide and the plants are dying, the heat, whatever, all this stuff. So through his output, I can tell he was able to successfully predict the outcome or the subject of a topic of an article, because he's telling me, he's providing me with information that allows me to confirm, yes, he is able to do that. Okay? So somehow you have to be able to do it. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So that's one. So you have the can plus the verb. And then you have to provide the communicative function, right? Normally that might be inherent in the verb, but sometimes you need some extra information to make sure that it has a purpose, right? So for example, can order. Okay, now what does that mean? You can order a million things. Can order food in a restaurant. Okay, all right, now we're talking. So now we're honing in on the context of a restaurant, food, beverages, that kind of thing, okay? Or can place an order in a restaurant. And then you have the criterion. Okay, how do I check to see if the student has really learned? Okay, so not only can the student perform the function, but the student has to perform the function well with a certain degree of accuracy. Because otherwise I could say, me eat burger, Coke, now. Okay, I could technically place an order like that. I can order food in a restaurant like that, technically, and I might get what I want. But that's not the way to do it. That's not the ideal way to do it, is it? I mean, you want to say, excuse me, can I have, I'd like a Coke, and I'll have a hamburger with French fries. Okay. That's a little different. It's a little better than me, Coke, eat, whatever, okay? So there has to be, the criterion for success usually is the form, the grammar, or the vocabulary. Now when you're ordering food, for example, you have to pick one. Either your focus is on the grammar, or the focus is on the vocabulary. It might be vocabulary maybe because you did the grammar before in another context, so you might want to focus more on the vocabulary. And when you're placing an order in a restaurant, for example, what kind of vocabulary are we looking at? Remember, we have different categories of things we can order. So normally we start off with what? S or A?
Appetizers.
Appetizers or starters. And then we have what?
Main course.
The main course or entrees. Okay. And then we have the sweet stuff. Dessert. Okay. And we also need some liquid, right? Some beverages. Okay. So maybe your focus is the vocabulary. So when you're placing a full order, unless you have no money in your wallet, if you're placing a full order, you have to give me examples of each. Now, if your focus is on the grammar, you're going to say, I want to hear can, I'll have, and I'd like for whatever you're ordering. And I want to hear it several times because you have to, an order usually is not just one thing. I'll have a Coke, please. And you're sitting in a restaurant and they're like, yeah, what else are you going to have? No, that's it. No, it doesn't work like that. You better order something and they'll kick you out. So, okay? So remember, when you're writing an objective, you start off with a can plus a verb. You have the function. Usually the function gives you the context. Okay? It gives you the context. It gives you two things. It gives you the context and the purpose of the action. What is the action going to help me do to communicate in the real world? And finally, the criterion. Let's keep it simple today because technically you could also use pronunciation. But we're going to focus on only grammar or vocabulary. So I want you to work together with a partner or in a group. And I want you just to give me one objective. It could be anything, any level, any language level. Give me one objective. Okay? So imagine you're looking at a course book. It can be listening, it could be reading, it could be speaking, it could be writing, it could be one of the life skills, it could be whatever. Okay? And I want you to give me a communicative objective. Remember, this is for communication. We're learning a language to communicate, so the objectives are, you can't say, to learn the present perfect. No. I've seen that before, though. That's not an objective, okay? So, because you learned the present perfect to communicate something, to talk about whatever, to etc., etc., okay? I'll give you 10 minutes. That should be enough. You've done it. You can check Google. I'm not gonna expect you to do this out of nowhere, all right? One objective, work with a group or pair.
Yeah, I'm cool.
Okay. Okay. Now Alberto and his group, they're really demanding. They want us to use two forms. They want us to use grammar and vocabulary. Okay? Okay, that's good. You forgot hip hop, but that's okay. That's all right. No problem. All right. Can you read it aloud, please?
Okay, so describe.
And describe to us how you guys came up with the.
Actually, what we did was like we separated everything to like parts, and then we had like a goal, and then an objective, an outcome, and finally this like Common European framework for languages, and so we had. First, we said, okay, we want the students to do this by the end of the class, and then we said, okay, this is what they should be able to do, and that's how we came up with like our ideas. So here we have to describe their music taste using adjectives. In this case, that would be upbeat, loud, noisy, etc., among others, and appropriate vocabulary like rock, pop, country, jazz, salsa, hip hop, reggaeton, whatever.
Okay, does that comply with the can plus the verb plus the function plus the criterion? What do you guys say? How many of you think it does comply with all three? Raise your hands. You don't want to take any risks, huh? No, that's good. It's good. Thank you. Very good. For example, a more general objective might be to describe preferences for pastimes. Maybe it might be a little more general, right? So here, to describe their taste for music using appropriate adjectives, and then you have some examples. Or usually both is a little like really demanding. Maybe in Alberto's class, if you're a student, you need to stay away from his class because he's asking for a lot. And Fernanda and Cecilia.
They should have learned that before. So it's like they have it. They have to use it.
Okay.
That was like kind of the idea.
So if you pick one or the other, one is the main focus because one of them you're teaching in the course and the other one is supporting language that kind of enriches the examples. So you don't really necessarily have to offer it. You usually don't get both. You usually don't. You might. But you usually don't get both in the same course. So you only really need to include one. But if they provide you with the other, it enriches the language that they're producing. Okay? All right. Front row. Which one of you guys would like to write your objective? Okay. Vladimir looks like he says, hey, what the heck? Why not? Sure, go ahead. Okay. Excellent. Let's see what we got. We'll write one more example, and then we'll move on to the. We still got a lot to cover, so I'd like to finish on time, and I give you time to ask some questions as well. Okay? Oh, what happened? Look at that. That must be my marker. That can't be James's marker. There he goes. Because James he's always got these new ones. Nice and new. Now, not so well written objective would be to talk about parties. Okay? To, like I said before, to learn the present perfect.
Too general.
Yeah, that's not an objective. Okay? Now, we're not going to give you a hard time. We're not going to go in there and say, oh, what? That's not how to write an objective. They do that in some places, but that's not going to happen here, okay? Because we know this is something you got to learn over time, okay? The important thing is that you have a focus for your lesson, that you know what you're going to focus on. And your students, again, have to say, when you're done, okay, all right. When you're done, then students will be able to say, oh, I was able to learn this. I didn't know this before. Now I know how to do this, okay? This is going to help me communicate with the real world. Okay. Okay, this is starting to look like a very low level objective. We're looking at an A1 level objective. Okay, can you read aloud your objective?
Yeah. Students will know how to use quantifiers when writing a shopping list, to compare and contrast, and then to know the food vocabulary and prices.
Okay. It looks good. It's got the substance. It's got what we need. We got to kind of reword it a little bit, okay? Now, in both cases, we need to start with can. All right, so we're gonna have can describe their taste for music using adjectives, or can describe appropriate. Usually, you put the word appropriate. Yeah, you usually put it with the word like you did here. Here, we're gonna use can. Now, is the focus the quantifier? In real life, are we gonna? Hey, I want to discuss some quantifiers right now. Okay, so listen up. Here come some quantifiers your way. Or what are we actually doing? What are we doing with it? What skill do we need for this?
What skill?
Are we going to say it?
Yeah.
We're going to say it.
Speaking skill and writing skill.
No, you got to make your choice. You got to make up your mind. One or the other.
The writing skill.
Okay, so let's switch it around. Okay, let me give you the first word. Can. So what's the verb?
Can write a shopping list.
Excellent. And now we want the criterion. So what's the criterion? So we're not going to throw out his, his quantifiers. We like his quantifiers. They just weren't exactly in the right place. So can write a shopping list. And the final piece, the icing on the cake or the cherry on top. What do we need?
Using quantifiers.
Using quantifiers. Okay. So I'm going to look at his shopping list. I don't see any quantifiers. Okay? So I want to see if he can use it for the purpose of writing a shopping list. That works. So you got the essence there, Vladimir. Good job. But we just had to kind of reword it a little bit. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah? It's not really that hard. It's not really that hard. You just got to get the hang of it. But again, and this is another thing. Thank you, Vladimir. Good job. Good job. And good job to the three of you, because I think you guys work together. When we talk about discuss objectives in class, okay, we have three options. I just threw the word three out there. I think it's probably two, but I just said three. Anyway, the first one is to write the objective on the board. All right, so when we're covering an objective, we write it on the board. Students see it. Oh, this is what we're going to learn now? Or this is what we're going to learn in this class? But that's not the only way to do it. You can also state the objective. You can have your students listen for the objective. Write it down in the notebook. Saves you a step, right? In some places, they give you a really hard time if you don't write the objective on the board. And I had to tell a lot of them, stop doing that, and they still didn't listen. So, because, some people get obsessed, In some places, they call them supervisors. So supervisors, they get obsessed with whether you wrote the objective on the board or not and how you wrote it, and they forget about everything else. You might have had a wonderful class, but because you missed a word in the objective, or you say, the whole feedback session is focused on that. It's a waste of time. It's silly. It's ridiculous. Okay? But some people don't learn. Anyway, that's not going to happen here. Okay? So, but it is important for your students to know what you're covering, what they're going to learn. You can write it on the board. You can have them write it in their notebooks. Hey, today we're going to learn how to write a shopping list using quantifiers. Okay? And you say, why is that important? Well, yeah, I mean, when we go shopping, we got to know what we're going to buy, blah, 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 blah. So we have to link the objective to something real, a real life need. I need this in real life. If I'm going to live in the US or in the UK, Australia, Ireland, I almost forgot Ireland again, New Zealand, Canada, I hope I'm not missing anybody.
South Africa.
South Africa. Well, South Africa's a little tricky because they call traffic lights robots over there, right? And so it says, well, anyway, but yeah, South Africa. Then I got to know how to write a shopping list, and I need to write quantifiers. That's how I connect it to my real life. Yeah, it has a purpose. This has a purpose. It's not just some fancy statement with some verbs and some. No, I mean, I need it. I need this for real life. Okay. And so by the end of the class, and I want everybody doing this, and I'm going to tell everybody else the same thing, so don't worry, I'm not picking on you. By the end of the class, what did we learn today, Cesar? Well, today, teacher, because in Peru, that's something particular, everybody says teacher. It's supposed to be Mr. Mercado or Leo, right? But they say teacher.
They're used to it.
Yeah, they're used to it. That's okay.
In Spanish we use it. Maybe
Yeah? Yeah. So I say, teacher, today I learned how to write a shopping list using quantifiers. Why is that important, Cesar? Well, when I go shopping, I need to know what I'm going to buy. So make sure they understand why. They just don't, like robots, repeat what they were told or what you were dictating. Because there has to be a connection to, I mean, I'm going to need this someday, right? So there has to be a connection to that. Okay, was that hard? It's a little hard. It's a little difficult, okay? But the important thing that you understand, first, the principle. We need to have a purpose behind everything we do in class. And second, we can articulate and verbalize the purpose and make sure our students understand the same thing. Accreditation is underway. Our teachers must be informed and prepared. You have another handout with 2 sheets. And I'm going to have to sit down because I don't have, oh, I do have a handout, I think. Yeah. This is like an 80-page manual for people like me and my team, the wonderful, spectacular people who have the most beautiful smiles on earth, we have to go over this because we have to make sure our teachers comply with this. Now, these are the equal standards for teachers. This is a very general description because there are another 40 pages, okay, about specific standards that teachers have to meet. But don't worry, we're going to take care of most of the problem. You're not going to have to learn this and process it and kind of, we'll help you most of the way, okay? So look, overview of language teacher competencies across 3 phases of development. All of our teachers have to fit this description somehow, one of the 3 descriptions. So the team and I have gone over these descriptions. All of our teachers are either in development phase 1, development phase 2, or development phase 3. Development phase 1. Teachers at this level are competent replicators. Okay, so what does that mean? That means in terms of knowledge, they have pre-service teaching qualifications and can follow models of good practice. They plan, teach, and reflect on their teaching effectively and are responsive to guidance and feedback. At the very least, that should be you. 2, in terms of skills, teachers at this level are engaged in the further development of their teaching skills in the context of systematic institutional development programs. So you're participating in ongoing training, like you are today. Now, phase 2 is a little higher. Teachers at this level are aware practitioners. Okay? When we all began, we were basic practitioners. We learned on the go. We had never done it before. We jumped into a classroom, most of us. We jumped into a classroom, we were like, okay, God help me. Please, do I use, oh, by the way, give me a hint. Do I use Spanish? I don't use Spanish. Whatever. How many of you used Spanish your first time? The first time you, if you taught here for the first time. How many of you used Spanish the first time? Well, I'm talking about 20-something years ago, so it was a little different back then. Anyway, so I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I just arrived in the country like a few months before. I was like, what the heck? I've never done this before. I've worked in retail, real estate, health industry, the education, restaurant business. I've never taught before. Whatever, what the heck. But we were practitioners, so you learn on the go. Here, we're aware practitioners. They have greater confidence and show initiative in planning, delivery, and evaluation. This usually comes with experience, of course, okay? They are open to and aware of issues that arise in the learning and teaching process and can independently identify and implement appropriate teaching strategies, seeking guidance as necessary. So you're more independent here. You can make decisions as to what will work in particular situations that can arise, because we know that when we teach, all kinds of situations come up, okay? We have the perfect plan, but then the perfect plan can't be executed as devised originally. Within an institutional environment conducive to professional development, teachers at this level have gained a clear understanding of the nature and value of continuing professional development, can identify their professional needs, and can set objectives for continued professional growth. So this is a great awareness about the importance of professional development. Now, you've been attending training sessions. You haven't really participated yet in full-fledged professional development. Full-fledged professional development goes further, and you'll be learning this over the next few months. In fact, you will be receiving access to a free online course very soon. I have mentioned this before. So you're taking your first online course with an international certificate very soon. You won't have to pay for it, okay? It's part of this whole process of accreditation. Everybody will have an opportunity to take this course. You'll be participating in reflective teaching practices. We're going to get you to self-observe. We're going to get some to participate in the mentoring program so that you can act as mentors. So we're going to have a variety of different alternatives for people, okay? So little by little, gradually, we're going to be expanding the scope of professional development. But rest assured, we will never overwhelm our teachers with professional development. Something I learned now at another place somewhere in the universe, at another program that I created, that was a different reality. Every reality is different. Here, what I want to maintain, I've said this before, I want to maintain the relaxing, calm environment that we have here. I want you guys to work calmly, to be relaxed, but I do want you to participate in professional development, okay? So phase 3, they have mastered a broad range of skills and strategies related to learning and teaching processes. They are competent in curriculum and syllabus development, creating teaching materials and developing assessment tools for use by others. They can also provide informed and instructive guidance to other teachers. Teachers at this level understand the need for continuing professional development even at this high level of competence and are fully engaged in this, both as learners and as trainers or mentors of less experienced colleagues. I'd like you to take a quick look at this again. I'll give you a minute. Where do you think you are? Are you in development phase 1, development phase 2, and development phase 3? And once you know where you think you are, where would you like to be eventually? Unless you're already, you consider yourself to be in phase 3 already, okay? So I'll give you a minute, and then I'll give you another minute to talk about it with your partners. Consider yourselves to be in phase 1. Okay. Okay, let me wait a little longer because there was a slight delay there. Delayed action. Phase 2. Okay, all right. Phase 3?
I would say, sorry,
Somewhere
on the
between,
way, yeah.
somewhere between
Okay.
2 and 3.
Okay.
Somewhere
Phase 4? Okay, all right. All right, listen. What we're assuming at the program level in the office is that anybody who's new to the institution will automatically, unless they have a lot of experience already, will automatically be considered in phase 1. So the first 6 months that you're here, you're going to be in phase 1. But eventually, as soon as you pass the 6th month and you start your 7th, we're going to help you accelerate and transition into phase 2, okay? So when the people from Equals come here eventually, from all the way from Europe, they're going to come over here, we have to make sure we are very clear in terms of where we think our teachers are and where our teachers think they are, okay? Because we're going to align ourselves with these standards as closely as possible, okay? And this has really never been done before in terms of how closely we intend to match their standards, okay? The standards are usually met another way, but again, I like to do it the fancy. It's like when you're playing basketball, you're doing you're going to slam dunk, but you're flying like you're doing like a somersault and you're on your way to the basket. Kind of like that's the approach we're assuming here. We want to really show off a little bit because we want to ensure that we get the accreditation. Usually you have to do something really special. Okay, you have another handout. It's a little more extensive. There are a lot of these, by the way. Okay, and here it talks about lesson aims and outcomes. So this is when it comes to lesson aims and outcomes, we're looking at objectives, just what we talked about today. So we're looking at objectives and outcomes. So there are two things here. How much you know about lesson aims and outcomes, and specific skills that you have. Okay, so let's take a look at this very quickly. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going just to give you an idea. Phase 1. When you're in phase 1, in key area 3, lesson aims and outcomes, the grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation points and language skills to be taught, you have knowledge of what you're teaching, basically. So the forms, right? Grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. What you're going to teach, you're familiar with what you're going to teach. You're not jumping in there and then you do the mannequin challenge. Excuse me, teacher, what is that A there? Is that AD that you wrote up there? Is that adverb or adjective? Golly gee, I don't know. Take your pick. Believe it or not, that happened once. Okay. So I think I told you guys about that, the mannequin challenge situation with a native speaker, poor guy. Smart guy though, but he just didn't know his grammar. It happens to all of us, actually, in all of our languages. Okay. The basic components and functions of spoken and written communication and interaction. So you know how grammar works. You know pronunciation in terms of segmental, suprasegmentals. You know that there are vowel sounds and consonant sounds. There are discrete. You know that there's something called rhythm, intonation, and stress, and you know how that works. So you have to have a basic understanding of this stuff, okay, if you're going to teach. Let's jump to the skills for development phase 2, the skills. You can analyze and you can select a wide range of language functions, forms, and features of communication relevant to lesson objectives in the teaching lesson plan for a fairly wide range of level and learner needs. So you're more independent here. You can pick the functions. You can pick the language skills that are required for a particular lesson, depending on who you're working with. You might say, okay, let me expand this a little bit. Okay, the objective only required, for example, the adjectives, like Alberto's example, but I'm going to jump a little into the vocabulary. Okay, I want to make sure that they do vocabulary because I think it's important. I think you're making a conscious decision because you think that is necessary for a truly rich response in a given communicative situation. But you know you have the language knowledge and skills to do that. Okay? Normally you just follow the curriculum. But here in phase 2, you make a decision and you're aware, you know what to do. Okay? Anticipating procedural, affective, as well as linguistic learning problems. Okay? And thinking of appropriate solutions to use during the lesson. So you're thinking, what's going to happen tomorrow? I got this guy, he's a little older, still very young though, he's in his 40s, he's still very young, he looks fantastic. But you know, he's a little older than the other students, and so he's going to clam up again tomorrow. So how do I deal with that? So there's an affective psychological issue there. And then you have somebody who maybe has a pronunciation issue, right? For some reason she can't pronounce the TH correctly, so how do I deal with that? So you're anticipating problems that might arise. But you have solutions on how to deal with those problems. Because you know from experience, you were able to figure it out. You know what to do if things come up in certain situations. The phase 1 teacher would need help. Phase 1 teacher has to look for guidance elsewhere. Hey, what do? I don't know how to handle this situation. The phase 2 teacher does know how to handle it. Okay, let me try this first, let me try that first, let me see how this works. Okay? And then adapting lesson aims in the light of previous lesson outcomes and planning activities for recycling and revision. So you might say, okay, I taught the simple past 2 days ago, but I get the feeling that they don't really grasp it yet. Let me give them some more practice. You know, I'm getting still some of the simple present. It's mixed in there somewhere, it's diluted, so let me kind of come up with some more practice activities, and I think I can do specific work in this area. You see, you're more independent. You don't have to come to somebody to help you with that. You have the knowledge and you have the resources to kind of fix this problem on your own. Can you see the difference? Yeah. In phase 3, to be honest, there aren't that many, we don't expect many people to be in phase 3. Phase 3 are basically teacher leaders. These are teachers who have been in the field a long time, they have a lot of experience, they have outstanding performance, and they are willing to engage others, to help others, because it comes from within, right? Nobody has to tell you to want to help other people. They want to do it. So they want to share, they want to create a sense of community, a professional learning community. They want to be mentors. They want to do peer observation. They want to do these things. They become teacher leaders, and teachers respect these people. They're like, he's really good. He knows what he's doing. She's really fantastic, and I'd like to learn from her. Can I observe you sometime? Excuse me, Fernanda, can I observe you sometime? I always notice your students really love you. They're following you around all over the place. I don't get that from my class. Can I, would it be okay if I observe your class? Of course you can. So they're open. Sometimes, teachers have this difficult thing that it's our private space sometimes, right? The classroom is our private space. They call it the egg crate mentality. Because we're kind of together, but we're separate at the same time. We're in our little classrooms. Our little classrooms are like little worlds. Once the door closes, you can't come in. Nobody sees what's going on, and that's my space. Sometimes some people see it like that. The phase 3 teacher says, come on in. Come on in, come on in. Hey, you want to come and see me, Chris? No problem. You want to come tomorrow? Come to my class tomorrow. We'll talk a little before, and you come and see me tomorrow. You're welcome to stand. You can stay 3 or 4 sessions, whatever. Okay, they're not afraid to share whatever they need. If you think I can help you somehow, I'd be willing to help you. Can you see that? So if you don't make it to phase 3, don't worry about it. We're aiming for most of our teachers to reach phase 2. Okay? And obviously they have to understand that anybody who's new to the institution will automatically, at the very least, be in phase 1. If you're in phase 1, you're okay. Okay? So that's something that we wanted to communicate to you, because this is something that's going to be told to everybody. So everybody kind of finds their place, and we have to work and help everybody get to where they need to get to. Okay. Final exercise before we go to the discussion. There are a lot of these key areas, and one of them is having knowledge of learning theories. Also understanding approaches and methods. You have to know a little bit about the history of language teaching, okay? And where these methods came from, and why some of the things we do, they're not from now, they're from the past. They're still lingering. These are things that we learned from the past that are still applicable. We are technically in something called the post-methods era, okay? Some people say we aren't. I say we are, and some other people who matter say they are. So they say that we are. I mean, big names out there. Some people were really smart, smarter than me. Okay? Because the method, throughout human history, people have tried to learn another language. Okay? The Egyptians tried to learn other languages, right? Etc. They had their teachers, their language teachers. They didn't have PowerPoint, but they had other stuff. Okay? And so King Tut, he must have taken some language classes. Maybe it wasn't German, it wasn't English, but it was something. Okay? They were invading all these places, so they needed to know how to speak these languages. So throughout human history, humans have always tried to find the ideal, perfect approach, the perfect method that works for everybody. And human beings have failed time and time again. Because there is no perfect approach. There is no perfect method. Because everybody's different. Human beings are different. We're all different people. There are general teaching and learning principles that do apply to everybody. For example, we talked about motivation actually that was yesterday with the corporate people, but if you're not motivated, you're not going to learn. Now that, regardless, that's not an approach. That's a key principle. That's an elemental principle for teaching and learning. If students are not motivated, they're not going to learn. Okay, it doesn't matter what you do. If you don't got me motivated, I'm not going to learn a thing. Okay? All right. So there are some basic, essential teaching and learning principles that apply to everything. There are some things from methods that are good that, again, people wanted to do the silent way so that people didn't talk. So I'm doing all this crazy stuff with the rods and and so I'm trying to get you to learn. And that lasted for a little while, and then it passed on like every fad, every trend for a little while, lasts for a little while, and then it's gone. Okay? But we did get some things like, paralinguistic expression to get people to understand certain things, not always speaking, so teachers don't always have to speak. There was something called Suggestopedia, which wasn't really a method, but it was kind of an approach to helping people feel better in class. You played music all the time, different kinds of music in the background. We still do that today, right? Because it makes the environment more amenable. So there are little things, tidbits that we got from these different approaches and methods and philosophies on teaching and learning, that they all come together. There was something called the audiolingual method, and that was based on behaviorism. Oh, I'm talking too much now. Ooh, this is an exercise. Okay, listen. All right, I better shut up. Okay, we'll talk later. Take a look at these. These are general learning theories, methods and approaches, and practices. Second language acquisition principles and concepts. Work with a group or work in pairs, depending on who you're close to, and see how many of these you're actually familiar with. If you have at least some kind of an idea as to what they are, what they represent. Because in the end, we have to be fully versed on this kind of stuff. Okay, when they come over here, you got to be able to understand the theory and link it to practice in the classroom. Because theory does have, true theory that is of any use does have some sort of manifestation in the classroom. It has implications for the teaching and learning process in the classroom. Okay, when it's something that's worth something. When there's all this baloney stuff out there that people make up that they're only for their own egos, then there's usually very little connection with the classroom. So take a look at this. I'll give you 5 minutes. See how many of these you're familiar with, and we'll go over them. Okay? All right. 5 minutes. Starting now. Everybody ready? Okay. Any volunteers on this side to go first? Yeah, Nomena?
Okay, so I'm supposed to give what I understand.
Choose any one. Whoa, I broke it. Yeah, choose any one of these that you can't see right now that you memorized. There we go.
Right, so maybe the audiolingual method.
Okay, what is that all about?
So I think that it's about like encouraging the students to keep listening and listening all the time so that they can really get used to the language. And so it's like encouraging them to listen everywhere they are. And with this method in the classroom, there are many materials like videos. And
You have 50% of the answer correct. So you needed the other 50%. So it's not just listening though.
yeah, the focus is like listening and getting used to the atmosphere of the language.
Okay, but you need the other half. So what is the other half? Do you know? Anybody want to steal it? So okay, let's see. Okay, so it's kind of like, let's see if somebody here can take it. Who wants to take it? But you have to be complete. Has to be complete. There's a speaking part. So it's 50%. She got a 50% right, but there's something crucial with regard to something of the other component. Yes, Ruben.
Maybe it's something like about adopting what you listen to, what you say, what you talk.
It's kind of vague right there. You got to be really specific. Anybody? Okay. Yes, we go back here.
Maybe you record yourself and then you compare the recording.
No, that's like 20 years ahead. No. Cesar?
Well, let's see. It's like listening and repeating, and after that you come up with your own words, speaking. Kind of.
You're like warm. Why repeating? If you can give me the explanation, why repeating?
You get used to it. No? Like it's connected to behaviorism. Like you learn by doing, like by repeating.
To memorize it.
It's like you're trying to slam through the surface of the ice and you're not making. All right. Okay. No. Yeah. I'm not going to give the points to anybody. Listen. You're close. The audiolingual method is based on a lot of listening and repetition. Repetition based on models. Everything is models. Everything is scripted. Why? Because the audiolingual method tries to minimize the possibility of students making mistakes. In order to minimize making mistakes, you have to follow the model very closely. That's why in the old days, they used to give you these very boring books with no pictures. You know, all these scripts that you had to read, and I was Bob, and you were Grayson or whatever, and we had to, and you're like, who the heck is Bob? Okay, whatever, I'm Bob. And we're in a place we've never been to, and there were no pictures, and it was black and white, and we had to do a lot of choral repetition, get the pronunciation right, memorize the script in some cases. So we were very, very accurate, but we were not allowed to be creative very much. If we were creative, we had to kind of reproduce something very close to the original scripts, because the whole concept was minimize mistakes, get high quality language from the beginning. So that's basically it, but it's based on behaviorism. Okay? Can somebody describe behaviorism? Behaviorism is based on conditioning. Conditioning. Have you ever heard of Pavlov's dogs? Well, that's behaviorism. Okay, that's classical conditioning, where you have Well, they associated the ringing of a bell with food, and they would salivate. So eventually it gets a little technical, but basically you train people to associate a stimulus with an outcome. So people respond a certain way based on the stimulus. Okay, in another way, the operant conditioning, people act a certain way, and in a language classroom, the teacher says, oh, that's what I want the person to do, so I give you the stimulus afterwards, and it's usually called reinforcement. So if you do something that I think is good, but it came from you, I say, okay, I give you a reward. Normally we give them reinforcement. That was great, Cecilia, very good. Can you repeat it again? Okay, but it was more incidental. So this is after the fact. The other one brings about the response, okay? That's behaviorism. Now, before everybody tried to stick to behaviorism and the audiolingual method as the exclusive method, today we use it when we need to. It's not just the exclusive approach, okay? All right, good. Another one, let's go back over here. Another one, Josie.
This is a guess. So fossilization, like when you think about an actual fossil, it's something that goes hard over time. It's not like immediate.
Good.
So maybe if we're teaching like a grammar structure, we don't like repeat it again in the same lesson, but over time, so it fossilizes in the mind.
What fossilizes? The grammar, correct grammar or the incorrect grammar?
Correctly.
The correct grammar. Oh, that was so close. It's the incorrect grammar because you make a mistake that doesn't go away. It's like you never get to correct it. It kind of stays there, and you're never able to overcome it. And so it kind of becomes a permanent characteristic of your language. And so you're very close, but it's a good guess. And it fossilizes. Okay, but now this is a term that my friend Larry Selinker, Dr. Larry Selinker, coined back in the year I was born, 1971. He coined it in 1971. So this term has been around for like 40-something years, and just a few years ago, of course. And so this basically refers to errors that don't go away. Okay, they've become fossilized over time. They just don't go away. In my particular case, it would be the enya sound with the n, with the enya and the no enya, and so I still make a mistake with the name Sonia, and I make it sound like an enya. That won't go away. All right, but the fossilization, there's no real proof that says that if you didn't undergo special treatment, it couldn't go away. Okay? I've never gone through actually I've never taken a class in Spanish before, so I don't know if somebody gave me some classes I could focus on to get rid of it. Right now I have to assume it's fossilized. The same thing happens in English or whatever second language that you might learn. Any other, over here, another one. That was very good, Josie. Just the error though, not the good stuff, okay? Over here, Chris.
Constructivism.
Okay.
I'm going to say that's constructive criticism.
Good guess. It has to do with learning.
Yeah, so like, the student learning, not like the teacher.
The student learning, yeah. It has to do with student learning. Can anybody guess what constructivism is?
Between two students.
Yeah.
So they feed off each other. Like.
Good. Okay. Yes.
When you, okay.
Charles?
I guess I'm making a guess here too, but it's when students maybe construct their own output using a certain form or whatever you may be teaching that day, whether it's grammar, vocabulary, something like that.
Now that's very specific. It could be more general in the sense that they construct their own understanding through exploration and creativity. So you usually have multiple steps, and you have people work together sometimes so that they learn from each other and they're kind of constructing something together. So they're exploring something. So maybe you want them to create a business. Okay, imagine your friends that you want to open up a new business. So you put people together in groups of 3 or 4. Everybody has a specific role, and they're kind of constructing this business, different aspects of the business. The publicity and the marketing, who's going to be in charge of that? Who's going to be in charge of the finances? Who's going to create the products and services? And so they all put their ideas together, and they're constructing a business. So they're all kind of exploring things, maybe on the internet, and they're constructing something together, okay? And they're exploring something they haven't seen before. If you don't know all this stuff, you will. Eventually, okay? Because we're going to make it very simple for you. But it is important that you understand that if somebody were to come around, for example, this is directly from the articles that you were supposed to read. Everybody read the articles, the 3 articles? Okay, the test will be ready by next Wednesday, right, Richie?
Yeah.
Yep, it's going to be ready. Do we have everybody already in the system so they can have access?
We're going to use Google Forms.
Okay. Oh, okay. Perfect. Yes, Fernando, you want to have something?
I never got the article.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's gonna need the article. Elena, can you? Yeah, is you too, sister?
I was
You sure you didn't erase the email? Okay, we'll get them to you, Fernanda and Cesar. Okay, we need to get them the articles. Anybody else? You too, Nicholas? You sure? Yeah. Okay, he looks pretty sure. Yeah, Piero?
No, I got
You gonna go and get the article right now?
No, no,
Oh, you gotta go? What do you mean? The good stuff is coming. Oh, you got a you got a class? You got what? Huh? What's going on? I was about to sit down and have a nice discussion. You guys got to leave?
Yeah.
I guess classes are important, huh? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. If you got a class, you got to go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. The final part is open discussion. Okay. We wanted to do this for a while. We wanted you guys to have an opportunity to ask questions. We have a few minutes left. So anything regarding academic issues, for example, I believe I saw something related to pronunciation games.
Oh, that's me.
That was you, right? Okay. All right. So there are a lot of things you can do. The important thing, it has to have two characteristics. That you have people kind of compete with each other, right? And usually there's a time constraint, right? So they have to race against the clock, or they have to run up like we've done with other types of activities, right? And so you might want to have them, for example, one of the things that we have to have them discern is the difference in how we make certain sounds, so minimal pairs, or you have a group of words and one of them doesn't match the pronunciation feature. And so they have to race against the clock. You might give them 10 examples, and the team that first finishes is the team that wins. Or, a variety of those types of situations where they have to race against the clock, there are points at hand, and they have to focus on specific characteristics of either finding the sound that doesn't belong, or maybe the sound that somebody said correctly or incorrectly. You might have students come up, and they might want to throw off the other team, and the other team has to guess whether the student is pronouncing the word correctly. So it could be writing the transcription on the board, maybe working with some transcriptions if you work with some very basic elements depending on the level. And so they have to guess, you're trying to fool the other team, stuff like that. How can I work with the basic pronunciation feature? Because in the end you have to make sure that they can identify how the correct pronunciation, and they are also able to pronounce correctly. That's the end result that you want to do, because if you play a game and I still don't know how to pronounce the word correctly, it doesn't help me very much. So there has to be some part, as much as possible, where they have to actually articulate the sound, and whether they're doing it correctly or incorrectly on purpose so that the other team can guess or not guess, that kind of thing. We've done the round robins before in groups where each student participates and speaks. You can do the same thing with pronunciation features. So okay, let me try something. Is this correct or incorrect? Okay, and you have a point system, and then the winner from each group goes up to the front, and then you have the same thing with the teacher, that kind of thing. So I guess overall there are all kinds of combinations, but point system, time constraint, and make sure that they actually produce the sounds correctly. Okay. Another question in general? Anything. It could be policies too. It could be something you're not too sure about. For example, I just want to make sure everybody understands, this used to be a problem, but we stopped it. There were people who were leaving class early for some strange reason. I had never seen that before. People were leaving like a half hour early. People were arriving really late, and like nobody was keeping track. And then we started, when we got here, we started observing everybody, and we found this stuff out. It was like, what's going on? And so a teacher, we had to let a teacher go, and she had left her class like a half hour early, and it wasn't the first time, and she was amazed as to why we had called her in. I was like, wait a minute, I'm sorry, but that's not normal. I mean, telling your students to go home early half an hour because you want to go to what? You want to go see your boyfriend or something? It doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. They're paying their money for a 2-hour class, and you just can't take off and leave. So I'm sorry, but that can't happen. Charles, you wanted to say something, and then Fernanda?
Oh yeah, I maybe I've had some issues with tardiness, on the students' part, which can make a class difficult sometimes. A lot of students, have a 7 o'clock class at night, and I understand a lot of students, are coming from work, things like that. But a lot of times I can't even really start class till almost 7:30, because I'll have 1 or 2 students. So we will sit, talk, and review stuff that they want to work on, but I don't want to start, a lesson maybe until.
Let me see.
At least, for more students.
Let me see. I understand the need to do that, and at the same time, we're kind of conditioning students to kind of continue with their behavior because
Right.
they know you're being such a nice guy that you're being accommodating, and I understand, you know, you're trying to help your students out. You don't want to leave stuff out. But if they knew that if you did start on time, they'd probably try to make the effort to show up a little earlier. Otherwise, your work is going to be impossible. I mean, I understand that we need to accommodate ourselves as much as we can within certain reasonable limits. We do have a schedule. We do have objectives to get them to meet. There are some goals in the course that have to be met, and if we don't cover them within a certain amount of time, we're not going to cover them at all. And then the opposite might happen. They might end up complaining and saying, hey, how come we didn't finish the book, or how come we didn't finish, I didn't learn this, or I didn't learn that, I didn't learn enough for the final exam. And so even though your gesture was a very nice one, you end up getting in trouble for some crazy reason. And so, you know, so I would try to kind of say, hey, listen, guys, I can't really do that anymore. We need to start because I need to get you guys to learn. And so you're going to have to try to get here earlier. That's it. Now, there are some extremes. There was somebody that I appreciate very much. He's retired. And this was somewhere else. Lovely guy. He's a lovely guy. And what he did, and I wouldn't do this because you're not supposed to. He had a 7 o'clock in the morning class, a morning class at 7 o'clock, and he would always have a quiz, like within 3 minutes upon arrival. He would do a quiz every day. Every single day, and the students had to show up, and they kind of did because otherwise they ended up failing the course. That's the other extreme. Don't do that. Don't do that because it's against policy.
Yeah,
It's not.
thinking like some kind of a way to positively, reinforce.
Yeah.
Encourage
The
that.
thing is, they know that you're going to wait, and
Yeah,
so
that's
but he's going to wait.
Yeah.
He's going to wait.
And I've
That's
stopped-
okay.
I've stopped doing that, so much, but
How's that working out for you now?
it hasn't really changed, things a whole lot. And right now, like this class I have, this cycle has actually been better than some I've had in the past.
Why?
It's a smaller class, and they seem to just be more. Well, I don't.
Are they
know
the
if
same
the reason is yet.
age, same characteristics in general? So something's different. I would suggest that you analyze
Yeah.
how this group is different from the previous ones. There must be something there that's changing the behavior, because if they're similar in characteristics, they have similar backgrounds, similar ages.
They might be a little older, maybe more professionals. I had a lot of college students in my last class that
Okay.
had a lot of trouble with that.
Okay. All right. Fernanda? Fernanda? Yeah, okay, Nicholas. Fernanda and Martin. Okay, Hamley. Okay, Guy.
I was going to say something else, but regarding to what he said,
Yeah.
I actually started, I don't know if I should share, I started doing something with my students,
Yeah.
like a challenge.
Whatever you say here will not get you into trouble.
No, I mean, I
Don't worry.
It's going to get me into trouble. No,
Unless you
it's
try to
like-
strangle somebody, but
No, it's like a challenge with my students where we have like I give them a weekly like tongue twister.
yeah.
And they have to, and it gets like harder each time. But the thing is that what we do, of course they get points, right? Because it's throughout the whole course. But we only do the tongue twisters at the beginning of the class, like the first.
Oh, I see. And how's that working for you?
And people are actually like getting to class like running because they're like against each other and they want to win because they're very competitive.
Now that's interesting. So so it's not that they can't make it. They can make it under certain conditions. In most cases, we would be like Charles, like me too. I would say the same. Would be, you've tried apparently something quite innovative and different. I've never done that before. So if it's working for you, it might be worthwhile sharing that with other people, among other topics. Because next month we hope to have a get together so that some teachers can present for other teachers, and you might be able to exchange some of your experiences and some of the things that you know. And that might be something that you might want to share with your colleagues as well. So if that's working for you, something there is motivating them, or it's serving as an incentive, this point system. And as long as the point system is tied to actual student progress somehow. Yeah? Okay, good. Martin, I think you had your hands.
Yes, I have more than one question.
Good. Yeah?
I have a similar problem than him with the time, especially at night. How long I should wait and when I should start.
You start.
Do
Listen.
you have any idea?
Officially,
15 minutes, and then when
I'll be honest with you, I've seen that, and I know, again, every institution is different, and we are in charge. We've been in charge for 2.5 years, but some institutions are stricter in terms of how classes are supposed to start. In terms of the 7 o'clock class, there's no real reason for people to be so late. I worked in a place where I made up the schedules, okay? And the last set of schedules that I made up was 4 o'clock for the school kids, and it was full. The school kids arrived on time, and the school kids are getting out later than they used to. There was a 5:45 schedule, okay? Those classes were usually packed. And there was the 7:15 schedule, or 7:30 schedule. And so they were full. And so I'm asking myself, why is it that they're not, students are getting late here all the time? Because I found that was part of the culture here. Students, teachers were very lenient. They allowed it to happen for good reasons. They wanted to be accommodating, I understand that. But it's part of the culture. We have to kind of get students adapting to the culture. We have to adapt to students too, but students also have to adapt to us. And if we don't start getting them used to the fact that they have to be here on time, it is possible to arrive at 7 o'clock. Most places let their employees out at 5, some places at 6. It's still an hour to get to wherever you're working. What branch are you working at? Camacho. Whoever goes to Camacho has some proximity there. They have a reason to go there, whether they're at the university, they're working nearby, they're working at an embassy. There are a bunch of embassies out there. Whatever it is, they're not that far. They're not going to come from Callao to go to your class, okay? So they can make it, because in the worst case scenario, people get out at 6. Those places that operate 48 hours a week, that they require 48 hours from office personnel, they go from 8:30 or 9 o'clock and they end at 6. They have an hour to get to your class. There's no real reason that justifies their lateness. So you can start when you need to start, and they need to know that. And you just follow your course, and that's it. Because if you continue to be accommodating, it's going to affect your work. And it's going to make it more stressful for you.
the same is also valid for the break, no? 15 minutes break and they arrive 30 minutes later.
Yeah.
And so then the question how I should react, no? When I say here something, maybe they are then pleased.
Maybe you can do what some people do. You schedule some evaluations, some oral evaluations for right after the break at certain periods of time. You have to do one at least once a week. So and you have to make sure they don't know when it is, because it can be unexpected. Some cases you might want to announce it, some cases you don't. Sometimes you don't want to distinguish between a practice oral and a real oral test. And so they won't know. So they better get back on time, because that's entirely up to them. If they're coming back 20 minutes late from a break, that's because they've chosen to do that. And you can control it very easily by making sure that there's a stake at hand there. Okay? All right. Another question? Yes.
In the past, I had one student who, I don't want to say was like outright disrespectful, but for some reason thought it was appropriate to like roll their eyes or whenever like I was speaking, and I wasn't quite sure how to deal.
Male or female?
Male.
Okay.
It was like a male. It was probably about maybe 5 years older than I am.
Okay.
Whenever he did like a sigh, he would be the first to magically volunteer for whatever I wanted, so I'd then choose him. But the whole like rolling the eyes and looking around and kind of.
Was it because perhaps the student felt he was at a higher level and that this was not appropriate for him? That, oh, why is she saying? I mean, what impression? Why was he doing this? There must have been some pattern.
I got the feeling that is what it was, but he was honestly a little bit below everyone else.
He was below.
Yeah, he was like. It actually seemed a bit like he was struggling, but the impression he gave was that he thought he was a bit better than everybody else. I just wasn't quite sure how.
How did he ever give like a very good response that required, perhaps on your part, positive reinforcement? You say, hey, that was good. And how would he react to that?
When I would say yeah, that was great, thank you, he would just do nothing. Like there'd be no response. He'd sit there like that. It felt a little bit like being in a room with Hannibal Lecter.
I know I'm great.
So it's kind of comatose. No.
Yeah, he just. If I said that was great, thanks. He was better at writing than speaking. So
Right.
I'd do it back and that was great, thank you. But he would just sit there
Wow.
Just kind of staring.
That seems a little unusual.
It was just a bit odd. Like whenever he would make like a sound, I would.
How often would that take place? Once every class, or?
It wouldn't be every single class, but when it was in a class, it would be more than once. So maybe like once every other class, and then like.
How did the other students respond to that? Usually there's a response from classmates. No?
Just kind of looked like.
So maybe it's a personal mind.
It might be a mental problem. It sounds kind of strange. I don't think I've ever come across something like that before. It's kind of weird, because.
Just a bit odd. Like the other thing I noticed was that like if female students were talking, you would do something similar.
If female students were talking.
Like it seemed a bit like a general disrespect.
If it really begins to bother you, you might want to call him and say, "Is everything okay? I noticed that you know it wasn't working out so well during the such and such activity. You know, use an excuse. Is everything okay? Is there something I can help you with?" So that's non-confrontational. It's inquisitive. So you're just wondering, "Hey, is everything all right? Is there something I can help you with?" And see what he says. There has to be a reason for it, unless he says no. And if he says no, for example, the only time I really had a problem with classroom management was with teenagers, and there was a guy who was really obnoxious. It was a pain in the neck, and he would sit to my right, and he would sit with his buddies, and there were two kids, teenagers, so they were 15 or 16 years old. And the guy was making noises and that kind of stuff every now and then. And I was still relatively new to teaching. It was like 3 years maybe. And so I said, okay, teenagers, in case of teenagers, this is an older guy, but in case of teenagers, for example, they're kind of complex because they're kind of trying to figure out who they are, right? So I'm trying to figure out who I am, what I believe in, what I'm going to be, you know, whatever. Who likes me, who doesn't like me, that kind of stuff. And so they're trying to discover who they are. And so first of all, we got to do our homework and try to find out what they like, what they don't like, etc., that kind of thing. We got to try to connect. And so the topics, you're not going to talk about topics they're not interested in. We have to find out what they're really into. And I call this guy, I say, hey, come here for a second. What's going on with you? I said, guy to guy. I said, what's going on? I said, I mean, you're making all these noises. You're a smart kid. You're smart. I mean, your pronunciation is good. You had a nice participation today, but I don't get it. How come you kind of act up every 10 minutes? You have to say something. I mean, what's going on? Talk to me. I said to him, oh, really, teacher? No, I didn't know. Come on. I said, come on, you didn't notice. Of course you notice. It's all with your buddy. Now, I'm going to separate you guys because it seems like you can't sit together. Now, if you can behave, then I'll put you back together. But listen, you're a smart guy. You're doing really well. In fact, I need you to help me out with some of the other students. So I was trying to kind of sneak in a strategy to kind of make him a protagonist, in the classroom. Give him some protagonism. Make him feel a little special. Not too special, but make him feel a little special. And lo and behold, I said, hey, can you help? Hey, can you give us what we're going to do today? Yeah, whatever. I can't remember exactly what I did, but I made him a part, like an assistant almost. And I got his respect. And that was the end of it. It was gone. It was finished. No more problems. I haven't had a problem in 20-something years since then. Because every time something might have started, or it's something that I did innately from the very beginning, and no longer allow that to happen again. Because they have to see that they have to like you. All students have to like you, actually. If you're not going to have a problem, they have to like you. If they don't like you, then you got a problem. If they don't think, and teenagers, they don't think you're cool, they don't think you're, hip or whatever the word is now, I don't even know. Fresh, I think fresh has come back, and dope has come back. Anyway, so if they don't think that, then you're in for a hard time, unless you can manage them. But this guy seems a little strange. The first thing you got to do is you got to talk to him, because if you don't talk to these people, then it's going to continue. If you just leave it the way it is, it's not going to go away. There's something there that the only way you're going to figure out what it is if you talk to him and say, hey, is everything okay? I noticed that today you seemed a little uncomfortable. Are you okay? Is it the classroom, the setting, or something? You got to play dumb. So, and then he'll tell you. He might tell you. He might say, listen, I just don't like the way you don't call on me or something. They got strange reasons. I don't know. Some people are kind of strange, weird, and they'll tell you something, and then at least you'll know why. You'll have a reason. Now, whether you can do something about it or not, it's going to depend on what the real reason is. And in some cases, there's nothing you can do. They were telling me before there was this guy who just didn't talk. So John was saying everything he could to try to get him to talk, and he just wouldn't talk. And he says, what do I do, Leo? Do I fail him or what? I said, yeah. Well, first of all, you've done everything you could to help him, right? You've given him opportunities. You gave him some study aids. You put some prompts on the board. You approached the guy. You talked to the guy. You waited till the break. You waited till after the class. You talked to him. You try to help him, give him tips, and he still doesn't talk. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. He's going to fail. There's absolutely nothing you can do because you did everything you could. Okay? So the first thing, we have to try to understand what's going on in this person's mind. And sometimes we do get weird people. Okay? It's the fact of life. In every class, every now and then, you get some strange people, and you have to be diplomatic, and then you do what you can. But the first thing would be to try to figure out what happened, why he's doing that. The sighing and the stuff, it's kind of strange. Yeah? You wanted to say something, Elena?
I thought that maybe what can help in this situation, Josie, is that, well, I feel that he has something unsaid, right? That he probably thinks something, but he cannot say it for some reason.
Right.
And so maybe instead of talking to him like face to face, because it might not work because for some reason he doesn't want to share that. Maybe he doesn't like you simply, and he just deep inside hates you for whatever reason. So maybe what can help is like organize the thing that I was talking about the other day with you, Leo. Organizing this kind of anonymous survey, asking students to just give their opinion about the class. How is going for you? How are things? Do you enjoy classes? What are the things that you are happy about? What are the things that you would like to improve in our classes? So that I can improve them for you to, for us to enjoy our classes more and for your learning to be more efficient. What activities you'd like to add? What activities you particularly like about those that we already have? So I think that could help him to express his opinion anonymously. And like, for example, he could say, I hate that thing that we are doing, or I like that, or I don't like that. So I think that could be a way for him to speak without being noticed, without knowing that you know what he thinks.
But you know what? If that's another option, but I would assume that it would be best if you can hear it directly from him. If he can get it off his chest, sometimes he needs to say something, he can't. If he can, if you find it safe enough to do that, it's better to get it directly from the guy, because then you can deal with it. You know what you can deal with right away. That's another option, because for example, many years ago, somewhere else, I did a survey. We used to do surveys all the time with teachers. One of the things I used to do, I always used to go to the teacher's room and talk to teachers, say hello every morning, every afternoon. And we did the surveys, and I figured everybody kind of was happy that I had that approach. It was a personal approach. I would say, hey, Alberto, how you doing? Cecilia, and I would go to one by one, every single person in the teacher's room. And I thought everybody loved it, and I thought that was the best thing to do. I still think it's the best thing to do. But somebody wrote in the survey, I'm sick and tired of this guy with that stupid smile of his coming by the teacher's room. Why does he have to come all the time? I never knew who it was. I suspected, but I never really knew. But I knew there was somebody out there who didn't like me going. But fortunately, most of the people did. And so I was going to continue doing what I was doing, because there was nothing on earth I could do to change this person's mind. I didn't intend to. Because then you have to weigh, who are you helping? Most of the teachers? Are most of the teachers happy? Do most of the teachers feel like you care? Then that's what's important. If you can't reach this person, then what are you going to do? At least, like I told John with the other case, at least as long as you know you did everything you could, then you have a clean conscience, right? If you didn't do everything you could, then you got to ask yourself, what else could I have done? The survey or talking directly, that kind of thing, because it can be a problem when you have somebody like that in your classroom. It's like every now and then I have to say something. It can be annoying, and what we don't want is stress either, because we talk about learner motivation, but there's also teacher motivation, and we need to be motivated too, and we need to have a low stress environment as much as possible. And we got a lot to do, so I understand where you're coming from. Any final questions? Very good. Thank you very much.